Welcome to episode 71 of I Thought I Knew How, a podcast about knitting and life and all sorts. I'm your host, Anne Frost, and this episode was recorded on December 7th, 2021. How have you been, folks? Thank you for sticking with me as I had a little break, and welcome to season 6 of the podcast. I have some things to catch you up with and a book review for you this episode. I have missed doing this. Let's get started. First, many thanks to those of you who have become patrons since the end of last season. Nick, Suzanne, Jennifer, Katie, and Julianne, thank you so much. I feel like you all deserve some extra appreciation for becoming patrons while the podcast was on a season break. That's some real faith right there. Thank you. If you are listening and would like to help support the podcast, hop over to patreon.com/IThoughtIKnewHow to see what the benefits are for donating at various levels, including gifts from time to time, regular online knit nights, and early access to things like the Mackinac Way Through Shetland tours. My patrons pay the bills so that the podcast costs don't come out of the family budget, and everyone in the Frost household is very grateful for them. Patrons above the $5 monthly level are invited to regular knit nights, as I said, and if that describes one of you listening, you should have had an email from Patreon about a poll I'm taking to try and find a better way to run those knit-alongs. Rather than 2 3-hour sessions, in the new year we will switch to 3 2-hour sessions, and I plan to choose times that may work better for more of you, so please hop over to the Patreon feed to find that poll and make your preferences known. I will do my best, but I have patrons from the UK through to Alaska, so I know that not everyone is going to be able to make every time, but hopefully more of you will be able to make it to some of them. And thank you to KJax08, who left a kind comment with her 5-star review of the podcast over on Apple Podcasts. I know not everyone listens through that app, but your placement in the app seems to impact how you show up in other apps. Positive ratings and reviews help the podcast become more visible in searches, so I really appreciate those who take the time to hop into whatever app you use to leave a rating. All right, what's up, everybody? How have you been? Thank you for your patience with me as I had a bit of a break. I still managed to fill it up with things. I don't sit still well. I ended up running a Wovember posting challenge over on Instagram, and I'll talk about that later, but we also had some solid family time and Thanksgiving, and I am involved with a project that is continuing into December called Hand-Dyed December. Jana from the Purl Together podcast is my partner in crime for this. Really, it was her idea, so I guess I'm her partner in crime. Jana got a winter wool box that is a little different than the typical Advent box. It's the National Parks New Year's box from Untangled. So rather than 25 days of gifts counting down to Christmas, it's 31 days of gifts counting down to the new year. And rather than coming from just one dyer, Lisa from Untangled recruited a bunch of dyers and some notions makers and put them in groups of 3 and gave them an inspiration photo. So days 1 through 3, for instance, are all yarns inspired by Yosemite National Park. Can I just pause to say that I love the idea of a New Year box instead of an Advent box? I love that dyers are doing Hanukkah boxes now too, but I think that a New Year box can easily apply to everyone. Plus, you get 6 more days of yarn. So yeah, brilliant idea from the folks at Untangled. So Jana had a great idea to do a Vlogmas event where she and I would open the day by chatting a bit and opening our other Advent boxes, because she has one traditional Advent box as well as the National Parks box, and I have a couple Advent boxes myself. And then we could go into an interview with the dyer from that day of the National Parks New Year's box. We had quite a few people to interview, so we did them all in November, and you can find the daily Advent opening and interviews with the folks involved with our boxes over on the Purl Together YouTube channel. Each day is about 30 to 40 minutes or so of viewing. Jana's other box is from A Girl and Her Wool, and I have one from the Fiber Seed, which some of you might remember from their involvement in the online International Fiber Festival as a vendor. And I also have one from Alex Laight of Late Night Knits podcast on YouTube, who put together the British Yarn Explorers box. Alex sent a pattern with hers to knit mittens, so I'm looking forward to getting those on the needles probably after the box is finished, so I can decide how I want to handle the wool placement. But I wanted to try and stay on top of using the wool from the Fiber Seed box. So I went looking for advent calendar patterns that use 25 mini skeins, and there are so many available. Lots of cowls and shawls and throws. Some are more suited to the fact that you are dealing with mystery yarns than others. Like some I saw had you alternating light and dark with the two sort of bleeding into one another, or they would be great if all the yarn was tonal, but these are all things I wasn't going to know because I wanted to use the yarn as I got it. It would be fine if I was going to wait and knit the things at the end and had some say in color placement, but I wanted something that I could, as I said, knit as I go. And I also wanted something that would be incredibly easy to knit because the mini skeins I have are 60 yards long. So churning out that much knitting every day is going to be a challenge. So after digging around on Ravelry, I hit upon Stephen West's Unicorn Parallelograms. It's called that because the yarn he used to knit his was Madeline Tosh's Unicorn Tails, which is what they call their 52-yard long skeins. And other than that, it really is what it says. The pattern is a total of 20 parallelograms knit one on top of each other. They are knit on the bias, so the finished wrap looks like a series of slanty stripes. It's perfect. At the end, he has you crochet around the outer edge, but I'm not even sure if I'm going to bother with that. My minis are a little longer, so I did the math and cast on a few more stitches. And then I also lost yarn chicken, so I am experimenting a little bit to get the right width where I use all the yarn and don't have any left over from the day. Yesterday was day one, and it took me about 3.5 hours to knit the parallelogram for the day, but I did it. Today, I am not sure if I'm going to make it. We shall see. Measuring across the scarf, the finished project is meant to be 10 inches wide. I think mine might end up somewhere between 12 and 14 inches. Time will tell. The finished scarf is nearly 10 feet long, but I have extra days, so it's probably going to be at least a foot longer too. I'm going to have a very warm neck this winter. Anyway, this is my first experience with Advent boxes. The British Yarn Explorers box will have 25 different breeds from the UK, and in each bag, Alex has included a few lines about the sheep they come from. So far, days 1 and 2 have been Brecknock Hill Cheviot and Balwen, which is a type of blackface Welsh mountain that has a white blaze on its head. They are so specific that I hadn't heard of either of them before. The Cheviot isn't giving me any prickle reaction, but the Balwen is definitely a stronger wool. They're both lovely shades of brown. I'm really looking forward to learning more. As I open these for Hand Dyed December, I read out the information about the breed, so if you'd like to learn more about these 25 British breeds I'll be learning about, be sure to follow the vlogs over on the Purl Together YouTube channel. Let's have a song. I have missed picking music for everyone. I picked this song because it mentions snow, and we had our first snowfall a few days ago, though none of it stuck, thank goodness, because I am not ready for that yet. I'm going to pick up my knitting, and I'll let you know how much of my unicorn parallelogram I got finished while I listened. This is Almost Home by Humans Win. See you on the other side.
The sunshine fading slow, snowflakes on the ground again. The waiting is all we know. Will we ever make it out? I need a piece of your heart, honey. We're almost home. I can't make it here on my own. You'll be the first one, I'll be the last, babe. Just say what's on your mind again and again. And not take too long, but I can promise keep on going, 'cause we're almost home. The heartbreak is setting in. Will we ever make it out? I need a piece of your heart, honey. We're almost home. I can't make it what's on your mind again and again. And not so too long, but I can promise keep on going, 'cause we're almost home. Keep on going, 'cause we're almost home.
Looks like roughly half a row. I wanted to touch on Wovember, just briefly. For those of you who aren't on Instagram, Wovember is a month-long posting challenge designed to get people thinking about wool, appreciating wool, and looking for ways to use more of it in their daily lives. It started in 2011 when Kate Davies and Felicity Ford wanted to push back against the misuse of the word wool on clothing labels. Case in point, I was online shopping for a wool coat about a week ago, and even now, 10 years since Wovember launched, retailers are still calling 100% polyester coats wool, and that is simply not right. Tom Van Dynen and Louise Scalle were also part of the event through the years, and I do apologize if I'm pronouncing your names wrong. And you should hop over to Wovember.com to see the archives from previous events because they are fantastic, and there is so much to learn there. Wovember has morphed over time, and in 2017, the founders stopped running it and asked others to carry the torch. So this year, I put together 30 prompts to guide people's postings and contacted a selection of people I know from other woolly experiences I've had and asked them to offer prizes to people who participated in Wovember. After I announced I was hosting the event, I then had more people ask to offer prizes. That is how much people who love wool love wool. In the end, there were prizes offered by myself, Morehouse Farm, Knit New Haven, Uradale Yarns, Letissier Designs, the Woolly Thistle, Twin Oaks Farm, Janette Budge, Laight Knits, Joe Spencer, and Kieran Knits. And thank you again, all of you, for offering your products and skills as incentives to the Wovemberists. All told, we had nearly 300 people participate in the event and about 50 who posted every single day. Every single day. I was so impressed with the tenacity of the Wovemberists, but it's also just very easy to get passionate about the health, environmental, and economic benefits of turning back to wool and leaving the plastic alternatives behind. The prompts roughly followed the progression of wool from the animal to the fiber community, and along the way, people shared what they knew about different breeds of sheep, what wools are good for what purposes, ways to use wool other than crafting, heritage crafting, lots of people who work with wool, and a whole lot more. I have been wool obsessed for several years now, as longtime listeners will attest, but I still learn something new just about every day. So thank you, Wovemberists, for being part of Wovember and sharing your love, knowledge, and experience with me, as well as with everyone else who participated. Wovember is over now, but some highlighted posts will live on as a story circle on my Instagram page. And if you'd like to grab yourself a warm beverage and explore the event yourself, you can search for the hashtag #ILoveWovember and you'll get all the posts from this year. Knit New Haven has been in business for 12 years now. Congratulations to Linda and her team. If you find yourself in the New Haven area, it really is a lovely space for fiber crafters. Visitors to New York can enjoy a day trip out of the city to visit the shop and take in some of the sights of New Haven, which is home to Yale University and quite a few museums and attractions as a result. If you can't make a visit in person, be sure to check out their online shop at knitnewhaven.com, where you can find Pleistra bags, publications from Lane, and the incredibly tasty Clinton Hill cashmere line of yarns. Thank you to Knit New Haven for sponsoring the show. The Morehouse Merino Flock Group is finishing up this super bulky fragilistic expialidocious cape over the next few days, and we'll be working on altering the pattern to make gorgeous versions in lace weight that work as table decorations. That's the joy of changing up the size of the yarn and needles you use. Erin will walk you through modifying the pattern for this purpose in online lessons that will remain available for you when you are ready for them. Additional patterns coming up include placemats, because wool belongs in every room of the house, and a stunning shawl utilizing short rows. Check out all the possibilities for improving your knitting at your own pace in a very supportive atmosphere by visiting morehousemarinoflock.com. As part of Wovember, I did the added challenge of wearing something made of wool every day. When I realized that that was actually my normal way of dressing these days, I upped the ante by not repeating any of the same articles of clothing. I was helped along by this by the fact that I am, in fact, in love with Woolland clothing. Their product line now includes more than just dresses, with shirts and leggings included as well. Check them out using the link in the show notes, and if you decide to buy, they will make a contribution to the costs of running the podcast at no additional cost to you. Again, the link is in the show notes, or you can find it by visiting ithoughtiknewhow.com and clicking the link at the top that says Be a Booster. Thank you for supporting our sponsors. A month or so ago, Pom Pom reached out to me and asked if I'd like to review the Shetland Trader Book 3, Heritage, by Gudrun Johnston. It was, coincidentally, a day or two before I went on hiatus, so they have very patiently been waiting for me to talk about the book. As I waited for the book to arrive, I started seeing images of the projects on social media, so I knew before it even arrived that there were at least 3 projects I wanted to knit. And from bits and pieces here and there, I knew that the book was a tribute to Gudrun's mother, Patricia, who started the Shetland Trader as a mail-order knitwear company in Shetland in the 1970s. You may have remembered that Patricia Johnston got a mention back in episode 60 when I shared what I learned about Shetland lace. I had read that Patricia had pulled Shetland lace into modern fashion by applying it to the clothing of the day. Long maxi dresses, sweaters with shapes in keeping with 70s styles. But the source I'd learned that from didn't go much deeper than that, so I was left to make a lot of assumptions. Between the little bit in that source and what I knew about Gudrun having family living in Shetland now, I had pieced together things all wrong. In my mind, Patricia Johnston was born in Shetland, a prolific knitter who must have started at an early age, and that she surely ran the company until retiring, and then her daughter took it over. None of these things are accurate at all, and in the various forewords and information about Patricia in the beginning of this book, you get the actual story of her involvement with knitwear design in Shetland. She was not from Shetland, she did not knit. Her involvement with the Shetland Trader was relatively short-lived, which makes her actual story and the impact she had on knitwear design in Shetland and further afield all the more impressive. If this book was older, I'd go ahead and delve deeper for you, but instead I encourage you to find a copy and read it for yourself. What Gudrun has produced in the beginning pages of the book is a record that belongs in the history of Shetland knitting. And frankly, I would like to see more writing like this, detailing the lives and impact of the knitters of the area. That time in the 70s, when the development of the oil and gas industry allowed many of the production knitters to give it up, saw a great deal of innovation both in design and in how the industry itself was managed and business models shifted. There is a fuller story here to be told. But let's talk about the patterns. There are 11 in the book, 3 sweaters, a vest, a smock, 2 dresses, 2 shawls, a hat with 2 variations, and a hair scarf. All of the patterns are either designs created by Patricia Johnston, inspired by her designs, or inspired by the woman herself. The story of how Gudrun acquired some of the original jumpers she based patterns on is incredible. One project is based on a surviving specimen she saw in a local museum. The patterns are size inclusive and are labeled as sizes 1 through 10 rather than extra small through 5XL. To find the sizing, you first turn to the end of the pattern, where you will find the schematic for the project with the measurements for various points of the pattern noted, first in centimeters and then in inches. Additionally, Gudrun acknowledges that not every design element is appreciated by every knitter, so while there is pictured on the cover as a turtleneck sweater with balloon sleeves, she also includes directions for a crew neck and more fitted sleeves. There, by the way, is a perfect example of the sort of innovation in design that Patricia engaged in, with a Fair Isle section at the top of the front and back of the sweater. and Shetland lace at the bottom half. There is a pair of patterns that you can work and wear separately or pair together. Bunnaberry is a sweater with a solid colored stockinette body with long sleeves that end in a Fair Isle pattern above the cuffs. Willapund picks up on the same motifs used on the end of the sleeves and applies it as an all-over pattern on a vest with a scooped front and back. Together, they would make for a very warm but very stylish pairing, but they can also be worn separately as a sweater on its own or as a vest over a complementary shirt. I think most of the excitement over the patterns has been for the dresses. Both have stockinette bodies and long sleeves, but the sleeves and hemline of Elsk are encircled by Fair Isle patterns, while Hjarta employs lace motifs. Each is shown knit to mid-thigh or just above the knee, but the joy of knitting your own clothing is that you can knit them as long as you like. I am most drawn to Sorik, which Gudrun calls a smock. It triggers all sorts of memories of the cool girls I knew when I was very little, like babysitters and other young women who lived on the fringes of my childhood. What makes me laugh about it a little bit is that while it is called a smock in the book, I think Americans think of smocks as great giant articles of clothing to wear to protect our clothes from paint and clay and such while we're crafting. To me, the Sorik is a jumper, a sleeveless dress that you wear over a shirt. But of course, in Britain, a jumper is a sweater. So we have a whole loop of language differences at play here. There are directions for knitting Sorik as a tunic or longer, and I dream of knitting one long enough to just skim the top of my knees. There is a panel of Fair Isle at the front and back of the chest above the bust, and square Fair Isle pockets sit on the front at thigh level. The construction is very clever. You start at the bottom and begin knitting, eventually connecting back to the starting row so the hem has a double thickness before continuing upwards. You then divide for front and back, which allows you to shape the armholes before rejoining the front to the back with extra steek stitches on either side of the front and back so you can knit the Fair Isle sections in the round. You then cut the steeks on either side, pick up along the openings to knit bands around the armholes that also form the straps of the dress. The pockets are also knit as one in the round before being steeked apart from one another and attached to the front of the dress. To me, that sounds utterly fascinating, and I really want to knit it just as a knitting exercise. But I also want to say I believe that is the most complicated pattern in the book. Many of the other patterns incorporate seamless construction techniques, or they don't require seaming or steeking at all. So don't let that intimidate you. I am just obsessed with how she came up with the construction for this mock. Also, I need more time to knit, you guys. I want one of these so bad. To sum up, the patterns are beautiful, they are achievable, they are size inclusive, and they are really, really clever. Gudrun Johnston provides instructions to modify them to suit your own preferences. Pair these wonderful patterns with the information about her mother and other knitters at the beginning of the book, and anyone with an interest in the history of knitting, stranded colorwork, or lace should feel extremely confident in purchasing a copy. I am so glad to have a copy myself and offer many thanks to Pom Pom for sending me a review copy and to Gudrun Johnston for putting the work into its creation. Have another song. This is The Myth of Translation. I have no idea who is performing it though, because for some reason when they uploaded the song to the website for folks like me to find their music, they didn't include that information, which is a shame because I quite like it, and I hope you will too.
If you say what you mean and I listen close, then I'll know what you mean. So the theory goes, but here in the real world, it don't work that way. You claim I don't hear anything you say. The myth of translation says words can convey intentions and meaning from your heart to my brain. Miscommunication has plainly been framed. The myth of translation is clearly to blame. feed our children all flavors of life. Sweet deceptions to mask the taste of life. We teach them to listen. We sing or speak your mind. They grow up and leave us, and we wonder why. Oh, the myth of translation says words can convey intentions and meaning from my heart to your brain. Miscommunication has plainly been framed. The myth of translation is clearly to blame. Out of Babel was worse than reported. The editors knew that we couldn't have borne it. When hearts draw near and wish to relate, precious messages are shared, but they do not translate. Myth of translation says words can convey intentions and meaning from my heart to your brain. Miscommunication has plainly been framed. The myth of translation is clearly to blame.
Hold on a sec. There. Okay, finished a whole row that time. A few more things before I go. Okay, as I said, this is the start of season 6 of the podcast, which is weird. What? How did we get here? In the past, the seasons have been 14 episodes long, and the reason why they were 14 episodes long is because that's how far I got in the first season before I burned out and needed a break. But 14 episode seasons aren't going to work going forward, mainly because of the knitting tours coming up in 2022. So I'm going to change things up a bit. We are embarking on a 10 episode season together that will end mid-April. The next season will also be 10 episodes, but it will be a 5 episode block with a break, and then another 5 episode block that will end in December. And if that ends up working well, we'll stick with that model into the future until it doesn't work well anymore, and then we'll reassess. Secondly, it is almost time for the Yarn Stash D-Stash. It will run in the 2 weeks that span the new year. So we'll start December 26th and go to January 8th. Yarn Stash D-Stash is a pithy name that sounds cool, but there is no guilt involved with the Yarn Stash D-Stash, and you are not expected to actually get rid of anything. The goal of the process is to go through all our fibercraft supplies, make sure we have the tools we need, get rid of things that we don't need. including things that for some reason or other are emotionally loaded items, and we get it all organized in a way that is helpful and joyful and ready to be used for the year. Some of you have gone through this process with me a few times. I do it every year. It feels like a spring cleaning sort of thing, but I prefer to do it at the end of the year because of my time in the Philippines, where the Chinese tradition of cleaning out your house before the new year is applied to the Western calendar. And everyone does a big clean between Christmas and New Year's to prepare for all the good of the coming year. And I really love that idea of just, getting everything ready and starting the year off right. So really, we should be finishing this up before New Year's, but I find that dealing with stash can be a struggle for some people, either because it's so big or because we have put so much emotional meaning into it. So I try to be very gentle with the process. So if you have been feeling a little burdened by your stash as the year is drawing to an end, or it's just sort of taken over your house a little bit and you want to get things under control again, I invite you to mark your calendars for December 26th. And make sure that you are following I Thought I Knew How on Instagram to get the daily tasks to get your stash into its best shape for 2022. Finally, again over on Instagram, I have started Face the Music Monday, where we take something off our unfinished object pile and devote just one day of crafting to it and get it that much closer to being done. At the end of the day, it can go back to the pile, and we can go back to the projects we really, really want to be working on. And in small, steady efforts, we can work through those UFOs and actually start wearing them or get them to the people who are waiting for them. If you would like to join us, just make a post on Instagram and use the hashtag FaceTheMusicMonday. If you follow the hashtag yourself, then you can cheer on those who are taking on those reluctant projects one day a week. And I think that's all the things that have happened and are coming up and that I wanted you to know as we return back to having this every 2-week experience together. Everybody take care, and I'll talk to you again soon. In the meantime, thank you for listening and knitting with me for a bit. If you'd like to support the show, please visit patreon.com/IThoughtIKnewHow to make a monthly pledge. You may also consider making a purchase from one of our sponsors by visiting the website IThoughtIKnewHow.com and clicking the link at the top that says Be a Booster. While you're on the site, you can also find the show notes for each episode. Thank you ever so much to my patrons, to Knit New Haven, and to Morehouse Farm for sponsoring the podcast. Find me on my social media accounts as I Thought I Knew How, except on Twitter, where it's just Thought I Knew How. The groups on various platforms are all called I Thought I Knew How Podcast. Until next time, may you be blessed with stitches that never drop, yarn without joins, and plenty of time to knit.